Sociology refers to the study of society. It explores how society functions and passes down its structures, values, norms, and beliefs from one generation to the next. The study of sociology has also traditionally had a strong focus on exploring the relationships between social structures and social inequality. We can broadly split sociology into two main categories, and we call these main categories macrosociology and microsociology. Macrosociology refers to the large-scale analysis of society and how social systems affect entire populations. Such studies might look at the society's laws and structures to explore how they lead to broad trends in terms of wealth and inequality. Microsociology, on the other hand, will involve the small-scale analysis of individuals and how they make meaning of their place in society. Let's move on to our next key term, which is social stratification. This refers to the fact that societies have tended to split people into categories or groups, and these categories or groups tend to be structured in a hierarchical fashion. Those groups at the top of the hierarchy gain greater access to resources and opportunities, while those at the bottom of the hierarchy have lesser resources and, of course, less opportunities. One way in which societies are stratified is through social status, which is our next key term. This refers to a person's standing or importance in relation to other people within a society. One way to examine social status is to explore how a society distributes status along the vectors of ascribed versus achieved status. Ascribed status refers to inherited status symbols such as hereditary titles, such as duke or duchess, your caste system, such as in traditional Indian cultures, or even your assigned gender at birth. Achieved status refers to status that you gain through your lifetime based on your own effort, such as the attainment of educational degrees, prestigious awards, or even getting access to a prestigious profession. To be a doctor is to gain an achieved status. Generally, it's believed that societies that focus on achieved status will be more meritocratic. Another common term in the analysis of status in sociology is the term master status, which refers to the main status in which a person is identified. Your master status is your primary identity feature. In caste systems, this is your caste identity. In highly patriarchal societies, it's your gender. But generally, your master status is the main category of identity with which you most strongly identify and by which you are most strongly identifiable by others. Of course, your master status is likely to have a very strong impact on where you sit within the social stratified hierarchy. Next up, we have the concept of class systems. When sociology was first emergent as a scholarly discipline, class was the predominant concern of sociologists. Today, we would think of class systems as roughly upper, middle, and lower class, but it's important to note that class isn't just about wealth. Class is also a cultural identifier where we might consider the upper class to not only traditionally be wealthy, but also of high cultural status. High culture refers to refined cultural traits that tend to be exclusive and exclusionary. The upper class are generally drawn to activities that cannot be reproduced by the masses, and the exclusiveness of these activities give them their status. An example is participating in elite and expensive sports, or going to live theatre rather than the movies. Low culture, on the other hand, is culture that can be mass-produced, but is also considered less refined. The mass production of culture tends to make it cheaper, but can lower the quality. Take, for example, the difference between a steak eaten at your local diner versus an expensive one at a Michelin star restaurant. A Michelin star restaurant will have a Michelin star chef, and therefore it is more exclusive, the price will be higher, and it will be more high culture. Generally, as mass accessibility increases, quality decreases, which is why low culture is considered less refined, but more accessible. One sociologist named Pierre Bourdieu argued that class is reproduced through several forms of capital, which is our next key sociological concept. The more of each form of capital you have, the easier you'll find it to achieve social mobility, which is a term that refers to your ability to move up the class hierarchy in society. Bourdieu proposed several forms of capital with several categories within them, but let's focus on the main three, which are cultural, social, and economic capital. Cultural capital refers to an individual's ability to navigate the dominant culture in society. So imagine two people going to a job interview. One understands all the cultural norms about how to interact, dress appropriately for a job interview, and they have a neutral accent within that society. They have high cultural capital and gain implicit advantages, over the other candidate who may be a cultural outsider, potentially because they're an immigrant. Cultural capital can refer to a range of other factors, and I'll leave a link in the card if you'd like to learn about all the forms of cultural capital. Next is social capital, which refers to all the people you know and can leverage to gain advantages in society. Knowing people in high positions in society, or even knowing interviewers on a job interview panel, or even having friends who can help you out when you're in trouble, can all give you high social capital. These things give you an advantage in life. It's the reason why networking is one of the most important parts of climbing the corporate career ladder. Our third key type of capital is economic capital, and Bourdieu believed that having high social and cultural capital helps you tremendously in gaining economic capital. Economic capital is just what it sounds like. That's money, wealth, and accumulated financial assets. Our next key term is social norms. Social norms refer to all of the rules that govern behavior in society. Sociologists believe that social norms help to give structure to society and govern what we can and cannot do within any given society. To understand social norms, we can break them down into 4 different types: folkways, taboos, mores, and laws. Folkways refer to the unwritten rules of behavior that we learn growing up as kids, like making eye contact when having a conversation or not leaving the table until everyone else has finished eating. Taboos refer to the unwritten rules about what not to do. If we break a taboo, it's considered shameful. An example is not tipping your server in the United States. Mores refer to the unwritten moral rules of behavior, and they can include lying, gossiping, or cheating in an exam. And then lastly, we have laws, which are formal norms that are enforced by authorities such as the police. So how do we learn about the social norms that hold societies together? According to sociologists, we learn them in childhood through a process called socialization. The people who teach us these norms are called agents of socialization, and they're very important for the stability of societies. Sociologists like Talcott Parsons argue that family is the core agent of socialization. Family, therefore, is the central social institution that keeps societies going. But there are many other agents of socialization as well. Emil Durkheim highlighted the importance of religion as an agent of socialization, especially for the passing down of mores or moral norms from generation to generation. Other agents of socialization include the school, siblings, friends, teachers, and of course the media. I just mentioned Emil Durkheim, so let's look at a key theory of his in sociology, which was called functionalism. Durkheim spent a lot of time talking about how society keeps itself together, maintains stability, and promotes peace. He came to see society as a complex system whose parts work together to promote stability and harmony. Each part of society, known as a social institution, has an important role. If one social institution breaks down, we may fall into a state of social dysfunction and normlessness, known as enemy. Social institutions essential for society include families, government institutions, the healthcare system, the economy, the education system, and the courts, among many others. The famous functionalist metaphor is that social institutions function in a similar way to the organs in the human body. Each has its own unique purpose, and each is essential for the optimal functioning of the entire body. If one were to break down, then the entire body would get sick. From the functionalist perspective, social institutions have manifest and latent functions. Manifest functions refer to the intended consequences of a social institution. For example, the manifest functions of the education system is to pass down knowledge and skills essential for raising productive citizens. But social institutions also have latent functions, which are the unintended consequences. Take, for example, the education system again. One latent function is building social connections. This wasn't the purpose of schooling, but school is where we do inevitably make important friendships and develop our initial social capital. There are also some negative latent functions of institutions. For example, some people believe that school kills creativity, raising us all to conform to certain educational and social standards and suppressing our individuality. Our next key term is solidarity, again a term directly from Durkheim's functionalism. Solidarity refers to the process by which people in society feel a sense of connection and obligation to one another. We can break this down into 2 forms, organic and mechanical. Durkheim thought that small and large societies hold themselves together in 2 distinct ways. Smaller societies tend to have organic solidarity. By this, he means that people in small societies generally have very close-knit sets of beliefs, values, and norms, which give people a sense of deep solidarity with one another. Take, for example, small monocultural societies who are all drawn together by their church. But as societies grow, we see that there is a greater social diversity within the society. So these societies don't stay united and stable just because of their shared values. Instead, we see mechanical solidarity forming. Mechanical solidarity refers to the sense that we are all reliant on one another for mutual benefit, even if we don't share values. The person who paves the roads for the farmer may pray to a different god and have different values to the farmer, but they agree to get along and respect each other because the farmer needs the road to be paved in order to get his food to the market. In turn, the man who paves the roads needs to buy the farmer's food at the market. So, in large societies, we are united by our common interest in having a functioning society rather than common values. This concept of mechanical solidarity explains why large societies can exist without falling into chaos, even though we are all vastly different. One of the problems with functionalism is that it is underpinned by a sense that we should all be grateful for the social institutions that keep order in society. But conflict theorists tend to disagree. They look around at all the social institutions and observe all the ways they control and oppress us. In essence, conflict theory believes that society is always in a state of conflict between the powerful, who establish the social institutions to benefit them, and the powerless, who are controlled by those institutions. You may have guessed that this theory comes from Karl Marx, who believed that the capitalist class, like the entrepreneurs and businessmen, exploit and oppress the working class. He believed that the solution to this was necessarily dramatic social change brought about by conflict. You can see here that functionalists want to preserve stability and the status quo, while conflict theorists believe a better society can emerge if we only embrace rapid and radical social change. Later, a third key paradigm in sociology called symbolic interactionism emerged. The symbolic interactionists disagreed with the conflict theorists' idea that the working class, poor and oppressed, are powerless. Instead, symbolic interactionists argued that every individual has power to change society from the bottom up. They tend to take a micro-sociology perspective, exploring how individuals and small groups affect change in their local societies. A common example that social interactionists will use is explaining how each generation introduces new language and slang into society, which filters up to change society as a whole. Perhaps there is no better example than the changing ways in which younger generations talk about gender. And this leads us to our last term, social constructs. Symbolic interactionists believe that language changes society because language is the building block of society. If we change language, we change society. A famous example comes from the PhD thesis of Michel Foucault, a French philosopher, who demonstrated how changing language around the concept of madness entirely changed how we treated people considered insane. Whereas once we thought of them as wise mystics whose rants were to be listened to for hidden truths, today, society sees mad people as sick and in need of medicines. They're often locked up instead of respected for their wisdom. This language about madness has changed, and that's changed how mad people are treated and can live their lives. So in essence, social constructionism sees that the ways in which we talk about things change those things themselves. That's where we'll end this whirlwind ride through sociological terms. Leave a comment if you want me to explore any additional terms you're interested in. If you liked this video, like it, and I'll see you in the next one.